Ready?
Rolling, action.
Hello and welcome to BikeWale, and today we're going to talk about the new generation KTM 390 Duke. Now, the 390 Duke, you'd agree, is the epitome of bang for your buck if you were to throw in performance and affordability in the same basket. So much so that we would term it as a legend. Now, and a spiritual successor, so to speak, of the Yamaha RD350. Now, the new one's coming and it has a lot to live up to, given what the 390 has done so far. And we'll get to that in the later part of the video. But before that, we thought we'll just quickly run you through the history or through the first two generations of the motorcycle to bring things in perspective as to what the new generation needs to deliver on. The first generation model retailed for under rupees 2.5 lakh, and for this money you got over 40 bhp and nearly 40 newton meters of torque. You got a motorcycle that weighed under 170 kg and came with cycle parts that one could only drool over. It had upside down front forks and a monoshock that worked an aluminium swing arm. It had outstanding tires, liquid cooling, and instrumentation which was as detailed as an engineering textbook. I owned one for a while, and the thing with the first generation 390 Duke was that it liked to be pushed. When you rode it sedately, it would get hot and it would stutter and stall. It wasn't very nice. But if you kept the revs high, it was delightful. It was fast and frantic and an adrenaline rush you couldn't get enough of. But it had issues. I couldn't get in 30 minutes of riding on my commute back from work without it overheating and spewing its coolant all over. I had to ride the clutch in slow-moving traffic just to keep things smooth and stop it from stalling. It had a hard seat, and if you were a tall rider, there just wasn't enough room. Then the second generation came. It was pricier than before, but it looked so good. That's not all. It also packed in a whole new set of features. The upside-down front forks and the aluminium swing arm continued, as did the liquid-cooled engine with the same power but a slightly higher torque output courtesy of a larger airbox. No changes were made to the main chassis, but the motorcycle felt a lot nicer to ride. It wasn't as frantic. The new rear subframe liberated more space for the rider. The revised engine maps made it less jerky, though it was still a far cry from being easy to ride at slow speeds. It got a quick shifter which rarely worked properly, and it had a slipper clutch so that the rider didn't need to care if the gear was too low and the speed was too high and still avert a high side. The new 390 Duke's instrumentation was now a full-color TFT unit with even more features and functionality than before. One could connect a smartphone to it via Bluetooth. One could switch to supermoto mode, which would turn off the ABS on the rear wheel in case an owner wanted to back it in and look all fancy. And it got LED lighting all around. If the first gen was a Maverick, the second gen 390 Duke was what every 150 and 200cc street motorcycle wanted to become when they grew up. Now, with all that history and the fact that 2024 will mark 30 years of the Duke name being in existence, clearly KTM would want to bring its A game with the new 390. It would, of course, have to be desirable and fun and fast, and it would have to be a tech fest because that's what Dukes, or at least the 390, has been in India. And now, before we get into that, we thought we'll talk about the design a bit because clearly, design-wise also, it's been a strong evolution. Now, the design-wise, if you were to compare Gen 1 to the Gen 2, that was more on the revolution side of things because the new motorcycle completely changed the design language. This one, however, the new generation, is more an evolution and borrows quite a bit from the 1290. So it's got these extended or the tank extensions are bigger, and you've still got a naked uncovered headlamp. You've got a new tail section. It still has that upswept stance, but it is meteor now. And overall, the motorcycle still looks like it is Leaf, but it is more aggressive and it wants to go faster than it did before. The side panels are still minimalistic, and if you look at the wheels, you'll find that these are simple 5-spoke ones, and with that, we believe that these would be lighter. Apart from that, I think overall the styling is still very close to what we've seen on the current 390, but tastier and, of course, with more road presence. Now, if you were to look at the motorcycle from the right hand side, you'll find that it now runs an offset monoshock, which is very unique to the Duke. And you'd also find that KTM has done away with the side slung exhaust and gone back to the Gen 1 that we saw in 390 with the underbelly exhaust. And moving the monoshock to the side could be a packaging related thing, but overall, I think it gives it a very unique appeal, given that how the swing arm has transformed because of that sort of setting. The front suspension continues to be USD, and overall, it's a motorcycle that would still fit in the Indian context quite well while giving you a lot more performance, is what we expect. Now, mechanically, of course, the suspension at the front looks the same with upside down forks, but if you look closely, you will see that there is a ring that runs towards the bump stopper, and that is a way to an indication really about preload adjustment. So we will see preload adjustment on the front. We might also see rebound and ditto at the back. Of course, the back already, the rear had preload adjustment, but now we will see rebound adjustment on the motorcycle as well. This would, of course, increase the price of the bike than what it is, but then clearly KTM would want to evolve the 390 when it comes to technical features as well, and this is in one direction. Tires, we are hoping should be better than what we've gotten on the current generation Duke, and if not, then you could of course switch to the Euro grips, or maybe even the Michelin Sport 5s, because these are a lot grippier than what comes from the factory on a KTM 390, at least in India. The engine, we will see a revision to the engine as well. It will grow in capacity. We've seen KTM and other European manufacturers do that too. So to meet emissions and not lose the power, torque, they have increased capacities in the segment that they've operated on, and that's what we will see in the case of the new 390. Maybe it won't even be called 390, might be called, I don't know, 400, 450, depending on how much they go up by, but clearly the capacity will go up, and you can see it with the changes in the engine crankcase covers, and you will see that on the right hand side the crankcase cover is now more like what we've seen on their dirt bikes than what we've seen on their street motorcycles, or the 390, the 200, the 250s, that kind. So expect an increase in engine capacity, maybe up in terms of power and torque figures too, and better rideability. So on the mechanical front, that's what we'll see. And wheels, of course, we've spoken about, will be lighter, so that should help in handling again, especially if you at higher speeds, flickability would be a lot easier, less gyroscopic effect, so it'll be easier to move the bike around. And we hope that the ergonomics, though they look pretty similar with the rear set foot pegs slightly higher and more upright handlebar, that there will be more place to hold the tank so that you can grip the motorcycle better. But overall, it's like we said in the past, it is an evolution than a revolution, and that's a good thing, because even though it goes closer to the 1290 in terms of visual appeal, it still retains the Dukeness, or the 390 Dukeness, that we've come to expect from the motorcycle. Like the engine and the wheels, the chassis on the motorcycle will be all new too. And we believe even with a larger engine, KTM would have revised the chassis in a way to keep the weight in check. As for features, we expect the new Duke to get traction control for those who wanted to use the throttle liberally on a wet surface but didn't want to high side, and cornering ABS. Both of these are borrowed or will be borrowed from the current generation RC390. We expect the new 390, we'd still call it the 390, the new 390 Duke to be unveiled at EICMA, probably later part of this year, and then launch possibly early next year to mark 30 years of the Duke name being in existence. So we'd probably see that. Maybe we'd also see a Duke R version. We don't know that, but finger crossed, maybe we will. And this is a good time for KTM to move or evolve from what they've been doing in the past, because as we know, their Triumph coming, and the Bajaj Triumph is going to use the current KTM 390 engine as the base. We've seen Dominar use that. So clearly, KTM wants to have that edge now, because there are other motorcycles that seem to be using the older engine platform. And yeah, so come 2024, we should have some exciting times with the Duke 390 Duke.